Hey there again. It's Douglas Scott McCarron. Um, this is kind of a heavy topic because it's about when I was suicidal, and I just kind of want to talk about it, especially if you're someone who is. I just ask that you listen. Um, when I was like 14, I'd gotten to the point where I thought I didn't matter. I sucked. I had all this like internal energy that ground at me. A lot of really negative feelings in my family. It was weird. Like, dad would come home from work. We'd all sit at the dinner table and nobody would talk. When I was at school, I've always been fat, so I got mocked a lot, made fun of. And it just seemed like everywhere I went, everywhere I turned, there was just, what's the point? But I didn't also want to kill myself. I wanted to like feel love. I wanted to feel open, but I didn't know how to get there. And then when I was like by 18, this had gotten pretty dark. Um, I came home one day and found my mom, and she killed herself. And for me, it was kind of like this big stake in the soul, even worse than the heart. It was like final proof that there was no love for me and nothing mattered. But now I'm calm and happy and peaceful and self loving. Um, and I'm really glad that I didn't kill myself. And I really want to encourage you to go out and get some help. Therapist, group, things like that. One of the things about sitting at home and thinking about it and just kind of chewing it over and gnawing at it is you can sort of feel it. It's like this energy has control and power over you. It's just unrelenting. And the way you get out of that is talk to others and share it. As long as you're on that thing's turf, it's always going to be grinding and unrelenting. It's the act of opening up and sharing that releases the hold of it. In my case, it took many years. Other people, it doesn't take quite so long. The main thing is to push at it and to be willing to go into whatever it is that's bothering you. Not with the idea of making it better, not the idea of if you find the right thing and correct it, you'll be good. The problem was there wasn't really actually anything wrong with me. All of these experiences and understandings I had just created this inner feeling, this inner cocoon that I lived in that just kept talking to itself. It wasn't, in a way, it wasn't even me. It was just it talking to itself about how horrible and painful things were. And as long as I stayed in that cocoon, getting drunk, taking LSD, things like that, and stayed in it and chewed over things, the more I stayed in it. It's by going out and having human contact with somebody who's actually willing to assist you in getting it cleared up that solves it. Now, I also used to go and I would look for friends that essentially what I wanted to do is have them fit into this story I already had about how much I sucked and how horrible life was. And it was their job to make me feel better. And if they didn't, they were a bunch of liars and swines and pigs. And it was all proof that I was right. It all was pointless and unloving. That's how this thing works, this inner thing. It's not a question of finding people that will help you solve this, because the mere act of the mere belief that you have to solve it is the way that it holds on to you. Literally, the idea that you have to solve it means there's something wrong with you, something horrible about you, something that if only you knew what it was, everything would be fine. But this thing, this inner energy, this energy pattern, will never give you that. I don't mean to be harsh, but it won't. Its whole function, the whole way it operates, is to always come back to, it's painful, it hurts, I might as well just quit. I might as well abandon this whole place. And that saddens me because, like I said, I used to be that way. And now I'm calm and peaceful, happy, loving. There's also, I don't know if this is true, but there are some groups that hold that we're all living in this kind of energy bubble. It's like we live in this world with a bunch of mirrors that all reflect each other and they all talk within our head. We're actually not even out here with other people. We're just inside having this refracting mirror. And if we die or pass over to the other world or whatever, and that's still there, it goes with us. So there's the implication that killing yourself isn't really going to relieve it. It's like who you are. It's an awareness that's not really of all this. I'll mention this over and over, probably in every of these shares, but again, I was given a name, Douglas Scott McCarron. That isn't my name. That isn't who I am. That's just a name my parents made up. I had a bunch of events that I interpreted as being really negative and bad. For instance, I have it that my mom never loved me. I can remember her telling me that she had a miscarriage, and if she had a miscarriage, I never would have been born. She said this to me twice. I can only remember she made me one birthday cake. My mom is also the one who committed suicide, so who knows what she was in. But the thing is was she really like that all the time? Or did I feel unloved, or I resented I didn't get something the way I wanted, and because of that I looked for proof I was unloved, and maybe there were 20 times in her life she was negative, and all the rest of the time everything was fine, but I don't pay attention to that. I just pay attention to the stuff that proves I'm unloved, because that's my story. And when I say story, I'm not making light of this. I mean, there's a very powerful, grinding emotional power that goes on inside of a human being with this. It's also there, for people who are really driven to succeed and make a lot of money and pile up castles and have their names remembered into the future. Because there's something that isn't good enough the way they are, so they have to have this other big thing going on. Sorry, I hope that clapping didn't cause problems. But it's like people work themselves to a nub and they aren't even available to their own families and children. They're not suicidal, but there are possibly, I'm not one of them, but I get the impression that there's a lot of them who feel like there's something wrong and they have to prove something. Who are they proving it to? They think it's their parents, but I would say that they actually are inside this bubble, this self-reflecting bunch of mirrors, talking to themselves, or actually it's talking to them, saying there's something wrong and they have to prove themselves. And then when they achieve it, quite often, the internal conversation is, well, that wasn't good enough, I got to try something else. Because it's not about being completed and final and peaceful. It's about talking about how things don't work, how things aren't perfect. And if you can get that all calmed down, which is the thing that happened to me, you suddenly discover that you really are just whole and complete, and there's nothing wrong with you. Your story may have a big to-do going on about stuff, but that's just leftover stuff from when you're a kid. But when you're in it, yeah, it hurts. I get that. But I'm just saying, you can resolve all that. But you can't resolve it sitting at home by yourself, getting drunk and self-medicating and all this stuff. So, you got to get out with a group, start resolving it, getting it to release from you. And, you can actually get to the point where you actually have it all go away, and then this very deep, eternal, internal part of you just kind of shows up. So, the big thing about suicide is, number one, don't do it. Number two, it can be changed if you're willing to go in and change it. And three, it's not a question of you got to go in and face this pain and struggle with. It's more just seeing how is this machine assembled, and not even really disassembling it, just like so it doesn't have a hold on you anymore. Trying to disassemble it is it'll just stay in charge again. It'll keep making up more things you have to disassemble. That's when, I used to have this thing about I wanted to be transformed. And it's interesting, transforming is an interesting word because it means going from one form to another form. And there was this flyer I got one time in one of the groups I meditated with where it talks about the difference between transforming and translation, where most of the time I would translate something. Like the statement, I want money, in Spanish is yo quiero dinero. In German, it's ich möchte Geld. They all sound different, but they're really the same thing. So I would go through and work on how to perfect this thing or how to let go of this thing. And I just kept having this whole story about I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do this. But they're really centered around there's something wrong with me and I can't fix it. They just sounded like 100 different ways to get around that without really changing anything. But what happened was, transformation is when you go from one form to another form. I was this internal anger, upset, pain, this name. And once I got all that completed and resolved, suddenly all that internal feeling and anger and chatter just silenced. Literally. And I don't mean to put any pressure on anybody here. It literally happened in one afternoon. Now, 40 years of training, searching, on and on and on. So, it doesn't happen immediately. Don't get upset. The upset is just more of the mirrors reflecting and making things wrong. But it's like I wanted to be transformed without transforming. I wanted to stay Douglas Scott McCarron in the personality and think of myself as transformed instead of letting go of him and actually becoming something brand new. So that's possible. But on the way, go to a therapist. Go talk to a 12-step group. Have someone to talk to. Get out of the cocoon. Don't sit at home and mull all this stuff over, because all that's going to be there is what's always been there. Now, my internal story would say, well, I can't do that, or I'm afraid, or people will make fun of me, or on and on and on. That's just it, trying to hold on to you and scare you and keep it under its thumb. People actually, in my experience, Not everybody. There's some people who like get snarky, but the vast majority of people, when you share stuff like this and you open up, you give everybody else permission to open up and they appreciate it. And there'll be occasional people who go, yeah, 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 yeah. And you can see them being chewed at by their internal story. But, the only way to transform is to transform. The only way to heal is to clean the cutout and let it heal. So, don't commit suicide. Go get help. Go talk to others. Get yourself free of this. Okay, thank you very much. And, if you want, come by and check out my web series. Little plug there. All right, thank you.